Courage. So what is courage to me? It's taking a risk. It's listening to your inner voice. It's the stories of Eliza, Robert, and Evaleta. Through their contact with the Hunger Project, in particular with the Epicenter, a facility that is community-led to support leadership, vision, and action, they discovered their courage within themselves, and they changed the world. This is Eliza. She recently passed on. But for me, she lives on because of the impact of her life. Her triumph of mindset over circumstances. Eliza was a mother. In 2004, she discovered she was HIV positive. At that time, no one in her area talked about being HIV positive because there was a lot of stigma and misunderstanding around the disease. People there believed that if they used the same cup as someone with HIV, they would become infected. If a person tested positive for HIV, they thought they would die within days. Lending institutions would not give loans to people with HIV because it was considered too risky. So, that was the context Eliza lived in. Then, she attended a Hunger Project HIV and AIDS workshop and found the courage to disclose her HIV status. She said, I am here, I am alive, and I want to use my life as an example. She formed an exclusive club of HIV-positive people. Together, they applied and received a loan from the Epicenter. With the money, Eliza started buying beans and maize grains. But this was a risk for Eliza because most people would not buy her product, afraid that if they did, they would become infected. Eliza spoke to each one of her customers, educating them about HIV, letting them know that it was impossible to catch the virus simply by buying her products. One by one, more people came. No one became infected. And so her business grew. She supported her family with the profits. But more importantly, her business was a tool to fight stigma. A tool to change the mindsets not only of people, but also of lending institutions. Because of Eliza's courage, the issue of stigma is gone from her community of about 37,000 people. Today, people there speak openly about their HIV status. All this because Eliza was willing to let her life be truly seen and known. Today, the membership in Eliza's club continues to grow, even 2 years after Eliza's death. And Eliza isn't alone. For the past 10 years across Africa, at more than 100 clinics in the epicenters, built in partnership with the Hunger Project, over 91,000 people have accessed HIV and AIDS-related services. Last year alone, a total of 82,000 people gained access to microcredit through the Hunger Project microfinance program. Among them, many living with HIV. And this is Robert. He is another example of courage in Malawi. Robert lives outside the Majete Game Reserve. For decades, the communities around the reserve used to cut down forests for charcoal and firewood. And they used to poach animals for both profit and also to protect their homes and their fields. And Robert was a master poacher. He started poaching. He was trained by his father on how to poach elephants and rhinos for their tusks when Robert was just 6 years old. Robert taught others how to poach, believing in himself that it was his responsibility to train the next generation of poachers, including his own son. That's why 15 years ago, the reserve ran out of the game. In fact, the entire forest, down to the bees, was in serious decline. The government of Malawi asked an institution called the African Parks to repopulate the game reserve. But African Parks knew that it wouldn't work without the change of mindset of the communities around the park. They, along with others, they turned to the Hunger Project and asked for help so that the communities could see the game reserve as theirs. They could have pride over the game reserve and see it as a source of pride, and that they could look at it and see it as a resource to be protected and not to be destroyed. Robert attended a Hunger Project mindset change workshop. He learned that poaching was not a sustainable livelihood for him or his son, and that to create a prosperous future for his family, he needed to find a way to redirect his energy. Robert enrolled in a beekeeping program because he learned that bees help the forest to thrive, and because honey is money. Today, Robert is transformed. He is now an advocate of land conservation and management. As a master beekeeper, he trains others, including those that he first trained as poachers. And about 65% of people who were poachers, today they are now beekeepers. Thanks to Robert and others like him, the Majete Game Reserve has not had any elephant or rhinoceros poached since 2004. Robert had the courage to lay down what was familiar to him and to learn something new, creating a new possibility, a new future. And this is Evaleta. Evaleta is a person of courage. For 4 years ago, Evaleta believed that her children were bewitched. They fell ill frequently, and Evaleta would take them to the hospital as often as she could. But nothing the nurses did helped. Then one day, a Hunger Project volunteer visited Evaleta's house. We call our volunteers animators for their special skill in moving their fellow community members into action. This local animator did bring Evaleta what we call a type of a magic in a form of a moringa tree. The leaves and pods of a moringa tree are very nutritious. Think of all the proteins in yogurt, plus all the vitamin C in lemons, and that's not the end, plus all the minerals in spinach. That's moringa. And in Africa, it is known as a miracle tree. So the local animator visited Everetta's house with moringa powder and fresh leaves of moringa from the epicenter demonstration garden. She showed Everetta how to cook with moringa. Your guess is as good as mine. Everetta didn't believe it would work. But eventually, Everetta became desperate. Her children were sick and missing much of school. And so she decided to try moringa. And her children's health improved. She received a report from school that the participation of her children in class became much more active than before. When Everetta looked into the faces of her children, she could not deny it. Their eyes were bright. Everetta dared to set aside what she believed to be true. She dared to try something new. Today, Everetta has a total of 125 moringa trees around her homestead. She processes the leaves into powder at the epicenter, and she sells the powder to her fellow community members. Across Africa, the Hunger Project is working with people like Everetta to cultivate moringa, reaching to more than 650,000 people. If I were to take you there, you would see the bright eyes of the young children living in those communities. Tonight, I hope you feel the spirit of Eliza, Robert, and Everetta. The courage to be known and seen, to dare to let go of the familiar, to lay down old beliefs, and to try something new. We invite you to take a risk for what is possible for the good of the world. Thank you.